So let's talk NFL draft, Max.
Okay.
We are. I will say that we are. Dave Campbell's Texas Football. We do cover every team in the state that is you can consider a varsity team, and so that does include the pro team. So we do cover the Cowboys and the Texans. We have. Let's see if I can turn to it. Yeah, right here. This is our pro section. We have a page on the Cowboys. Look at that. I write the Cowboys preview, and Max writes the Texans preview.
I do. That's
so we do
right.
that. You do, yeah. But we got to wait until the draft is over before we can write that. So we do cover the Cowboys and the Texans, but we also understand that if you want NFL draft news, like real breaking news having to do with who the Cowboys are going to take or who the Texans are going to take,
we are not the place.
We can't do that. Like we can, but
we could, but there really wouldn't be any point because there's 8 million people doing it.
That's exactly right. That's not our wheelhouse. We
cover indie football.
We stay in our lanes. Yeah, we're really into these bands you've never heard of. But yeah, it's so if you're looking for that, you're probably barking up the wrong tree. I know there's a lot of people who are really interested in what the Cowboys and the Texans are going to do, and we will when they do draft, we will certainly report on that. But overall, I think that the NFL draft as a cottage industry, it doesn't really interest me that much altogether. We just, I don't know. When the draft rolls around, like Thursday, I'll probably tune in a little bit. I probably will. But at the same time, I can read what happened afterwards and get the same amount of satisfaction. Maybe I'm weird. Because I don't get into the drama of who's going to take who and when they actually get drafted.
Yeah, I don't care.
I'll just read after the fact.
It's like I don't watch it wrapped. It's just a thing to have on.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And it's on while I'm doing other stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that. No, I don't know. I'm the guy who I'll read who drafted whom the next day, and then I'll be able to take that kind of analysis. But the instant hot take you've got to have as soon as they draft them just doesn't really apply to me. That's not of interest to me. But what is of interest to me is that by Saturday, because it's now Thursday is the first round, the second and third rounds are Friday night, and then Saturday is the rest of the rounds. That is when you will, by that time, there will be a lot of Texans who have been taken in the NFL draft. And you mentioned this in the roundup, that we've got that our friend Bruce Feldman at Fox Sports has made a list of 10 underrated draft prospects heading into the NFL draft, and one of them, Corey Coleman. Okay, that's not surprising. I'm surprised he's underrated because this is a guy who won the Biletnikoff Award. I know he's been banged up a little bit, but this is a guy who has proven himself to be one of the very best wide receivers in the nation, the Baylor wide receiver, of course. Corey Coleman, not surprising. The other one I thought was super duper duper interesting. The other Texan he has on his 10, on Bruce Feldman has on his 10.
There's actually 3. I was wrong. But the other one, and we'll get to the third one.
David Morgan II, the tight end from UTSA.
Marble Falls great.
Marble Falls, a big, massive guy who I think that he's exactly right. David Morgan, the reason the reason he falls perfectly into that underrated category is, one, he plays at UTSA, which is a new program that still a lot of people, they're still kind of getting some national traction as far as that they actually exist. They're a new program. The other part of it is that, frankly, UTSA wasn't very good last year or the year before that. They weren't very good, and so he kind of goes underrated. But he was arguably UTSA's best player, right? I mean, UTSA's best player was probably their tight end. That doesn't bode well for them. That when tight end's your best player, that's probably not great. But he was probably their best player, and I think he's exactly right. I think David Morgan's going to be a steal for somebody in the NFL draft because I think he's a next level talent.
Yeah, and I thought this was really cool because I was randomly, Marble Falls is a team that I got to cover a lot in the Austin area, and in his heyday, David Morgan and his quarterback Thor Warner, one of the greatest names ever. The two of them basically carried that team, and I remember watching both of them, thinking, "Boy, if they were on a team surrounded by a little more talent, they'd be dangerous. And sure enough, UTSA picks up Morgan, and he really is. He's one of the most underrated players in the country.
You said there was a third one. Who's the third one?
Jakeem Grant made the list.
My boy. You know,
but that's like, it's weird.
We like Jakeem Grant, but he's not underrated in our minds.
He's not underrated in our minds. Neither is Corey Coleman, obviously. Yeah. And I don't know. You look at that list and you go,
well, Jakeem Grant,
he's one of the fastest men on the planet.
Yes, he's one of the fastest men on the planet. The reason that he's underrated, I don't even have to click on Bruce Feldman's article, although you should. Absolutely. Give him those clicks. But Bruce Feldman's article, I can tell you what it says.
Yeah.
He's undersized because he's tiny.
Yeah.
He's a tiny human, but he is also one of the fastest humans on the planet. Yeah. And a guy who can absolutely flat out fly.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to grab him late, and they're going to stick him back there to return kicks and punts and be kind of that H-back, the kind of water bug running back wide receiver type guy, and they're going to be very happy because Jakeem Grant, that's the kind of thing you can't teach. You can't teach, what they say, 4.19 was his wind-aided 40.
Who knows?
There's no way he ran a 4.19 unwind-aided. But if I'll tell you, if he's out there in Lubbock and he gets the wind at his back.
Sure.
Maybe. You never know. But
Feldman also had a just missed the cut category. Andrew Billings made that list.
Again, another guy I don't see how he's underrated.
I just
he's awesome. Maybe that's just me.
Yeah, he's awesome, and I think it's really just relative to the position these guys will all be drafted.
Okay.
I think that's what he's saying. The value for the draft pick with these guys. I mean, Andrew Billings. Say what you want, but the one thing that I think is really important at those defensive tackle positions that maybe gets overlooked based on production and the teams you play for and the schemes you play under, strength. And everyone, to a man, says Billings' strength is crazy.
Is out of control. Yeah, he's one of the strongest men in the world. I mean, simply put. And so he's a guy who I think is going to find himself cashing paychecks here pretty soon from the NFL.
So I was wondering about this. Who, because I guess we can include the FBS guys in Texas. Who's the highest Texan that's getting taken in this?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I'll tell you that when you're watching the NFL draft on Thursday, if you're expecting Texans to go, in the past few years we've gotten really spoiled because we've had Texans, either high school or college prospects from Texas, go in like the top 10, right? Be a top 10 draft pick. I don't know if that's happening this year.
Right.
All the mock drafts I've seen have had, top 10s that don't involve a ton of Texans. But I do think that once you get down into the kind of the back half of the NFL draft, I think you're going to see a lot of Texans who have first-round talent. For example, I think Corey Coleman's going in the first round. I mentioned him. Corey Coleman.
Josh Doxson,
I think, is going in the first round. Even with the injury, I think that he's too good of a wide receiver to let go. I think Josh Doxson probably goes in the first round. I would expect one guy that I've heard a lot of people talk really highly of, William Jackson III, the corner out of Houston.
Yeah, for sure.
This guy was, playmaking corners are hard to come by. And here you had a guy who was a legit playmaking corner who stood out on a unit with an outstanding secondary. And when you stand out among guys like Trevon Stewart, when you stand out in a secondary that's absolutely loaded, that's saying something. William Jackson III, I think, is going to be very, very, very highly touted. I think he goes in the first round. I think Jermaine Ifedi goes in the first round, the tackle from Texas A&M. Another year, another offensive lineman from A&M getting drafted. This is a guy who was fantastic coming out of high school, and now he parlayed that into an excellent A&M career, and now I think he's going to get drafted in the first round somewhere. I also think, now he didn't play in Texas, but Ashawn Robinson.
Right.
Ashawn Robinson is probably going to go, and if you want to squint, he's probably the guy that has the highest variance in the sense that I think he's definitely going in the first round, and he may fall to the
right on the edge
of the first round.
Depends on the needs.
Or somebody at like 12 could be like, we're going up to get him.
That's just the defensive tackle we like.
Right.
Yeah.
He's the guy. And anybody who saw him play at Alabama or at Fort Worth Arlington Heights knows what a star he is. He is something else. As far as those are probably the only ones that I would imagine are getting drafted.
Well, I tell you what stands out
first
too,
round. Maybe Andrew Billings again in that same sense that maybe somebody says that's our guy.
Someone sees him as a first round guy for sure.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the other thing that I don't know if you've really. I mean, I get it because the news cycle is dominated by quarterback coverage.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at the list of all the quarterbacks in this draft, like the top 12. Boy, it's weird not seeing Texans.
Yeah, it is, right?
Just nowhere.
Well, and I mean the thing is, who are the best Texans that are coming out in the NFL draft, right? It's guys who NFL are not prototypical NFL quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I mean, think about Trevon Boykin.
Yeah.
Trevon Boykin, not your typical, NFL quarterback. Dreyfus Jackson, whom we love, but from Rice, but a guy who's probably not your typical NFL quarterback. So now next year. If Seth Russell stays healthy, I imagine he'll be mentioned in this regard.
Maybe. I mean, right now, I'm looking at Todd McShay's list right now. No Texans in his top 14.
Wow.
None of those guys.
But I mean, here's the other thing: is that we could, I think next year, I think somebody maybe not as a quarterback, but I think somebody takes a shot at Greg Ward Jr. I think. Pat Mahomes probably isn't coming out, but if he does, then maybe somebody takes a late round draft pick on him. I think this is a one-time thing, but I mean, it comes down to, think about the places that typically put out big-time quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Baylor, they didn't graduate any quarterbacks. Tech didn't graduate any quarterbacks. Texas hasn't had a decent quarterback since Colt McCoy. A&M hasn't put out a decent quarterback since Johnny Manziel, and that's
going well.
Those are the guys. Those are the places that you expect to put out quarterbacks, and they haven't. It's been those types of places.
And we've got a state full of intriguing quarterbacks for next year. You're absolutely right. You've got your Mahomes, your Greg Ward Jr., your Seth Russell. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, Kenny Hill at TCU.
Yeah,
you've got Trevor Knight coming back to the Lone Star State to play at A&M.
Be a much different year next year, probably. But this year, not much.
This year, the running back or the quarterback position a little light in the NFL draft for Texans. So we will have you covered on the NFL draft, I guess, as best as we can on TexasFootball.com. We'll tell you who gets drafted. Well, we treat the NFL draft like it should be treated. Like it's an event that gets covered, and then I tell you what happens.
Yeah. Why not?